Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson's Happy Friday. We're going to bring you back to a story that we covered at the time, but whose significance we didn't fully understand then. And it's definitely worth revisiting. So just before dawn on November 4th of last year, a team of masked FBI agents wearing bulletproof vests showed up at the home of a journalist who works for the investigative media company Project Veritas. They pounded on his door. They said, "They have a warrant. Let us in." We know what happened because it was all captured on camera. Here it is.
I'm sorry, so what is this regarding?
This is the search warrant. Open up.
So another team coming out? Yeah, so we'll split up. So we're going to out.
Let me see your hands! Let me see your hands! It was serious. They had weapons. They barged in. They went through the whole place. They tore the journalist's home apart. There's another team coming, they said. And they were right. 2 days later, feds hit the home of Project Veritas founder James O'Keefe in Westchester County. So why were the FBI coming to the homes of employees at Project Veritas? What did they do? Were they involved in a human smuggling ring? Were they bringing fentanyl in from China and killing more Americans? No. The FBI believed that Project Veritas was in possession of or had information about a diary written by Joe Biden's daughter, Ashley Biden. The FBI claimed that diary had been stolen. We now know the FBI knew that diary had not been stolen, and it wasn't. But as James O'Keefe pointed out at the time, and didn't have enough people hear him when he said it, what if it was stolen? Having a stolen diary is not a federal crime. So what in that diary was so important that Joe Biden sent FBI agents to get it back? Here's what O'Keefe said.
The tipsters indicated that the diary included explosive allegations against then-candidate Joe Biden. The tipsters indicated that they were negotiating with a different media outlet for the payment of monies for the diary. We attempted to return the diary to an attorney representing Ms. Biden, but that attorney refused to authenticate it. Project Veritas gave the diary to law enforcement to ensure it could be returned to its rightful owner. We never published it. Now, Ms. Biden's father's Department of Justice, specifically the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, appears to be investigating the situation, claiming the diary was stolen. We don't know if it was, but it begs the question. In what world is the alleged theft of a diary investigated by the president's FBI and his Department of Justice a diary?
So everyone in American media hates James O'Keefe because he covers them. So they ignored this story and they never answered the question. But the question hangs in the air, and it's a real one, and we're quoting. In what world is the alleged theft of a diary investigated by the FBI? Why were they doing this? Well, the answer lies in what's in the diary. And now we know what's in the diary, thanks to a new piece in the Daily News, which has a copy of the diary. Josh Boswell is a reporter there at the Daily Mail. He broke this story, and he joins us with the answer.
Hi, Tom.
Josh, thanks so much for coming on. What is this about?
So we've looked at the diary. We've spent a lot of time considering carefully what to report from it, and what we've chosen to report are some pretty serious things that actually the president's daughter wrote. She wrote that she was musing over whether her father was sexually inappropriate with her when she was a little girl. She mentions in the diary showers with her dad. She also talks about them being probably not appropriate. She writes that down on one page in her diary. And she also refers to being hypersexualized at a young age. There's a lot of references in the diary to her repeated spells in rehab, her relapses with drug abuse, alcohol, and sex addiction as well. And there's some truly kind of shocking things in there as well about how Joe cried. He was brought to tears over worry for his daughter just before a Democratic primary debate. So we can now know, because of this diary, that there are several things that would be extremely important for national security, that they not fall into the wrong hands. For example, the Chinese, right, or the Russians, who could use this as blackmail if it wasn't published. So that's why we just decided to put this out there, and why we think that it's important that the American people know this.
Well, it's prima facie shocking. I mean, fathers don't shower with their daughters at an age at which they remember it, of course. In your reporting, did you see any potential, and I know this wasn't the focus of your piece, but potential crime that would justify a pre-dawn knock raid by the FBI?
Yeah, this was an area that we covered in our reporting. We really wanted to find out, how did the diary get from where it was to to being published online. And it was left by Ashley in a house that she stayed in for a while after she came out of rehab. And then the next person who came to that house found the diary under the bed. And they're not actually being investigated by the FBI for stealing it. They're being investigated for selling it. So I don't know if that justifies a dawn raid on the people who got hold of the diary, who bought it from them. But the person who found it, she is being investigated for selling it. That's the alleged crime that the FBI are looking into.
Yeah, which is not a federal crime. Josh Boswell of the Daily Mail. Great to see you tonight. Thank you so much.
FBI
Thank you.
So we're going to recap a lot of what you just heard. This has been out there for a while. It should have been the focus of a lot more attention than it has been. We hope to change that. So here, once again, are the words from Ashley Biden's diary. Quote, "I've always been boy crazy," she wrote, "hypersexualized at a young age. I remember somewhat being sexualized with a family member. I remember having sex with friends at a young age. Showers with my dad, probably not appropriate." So Ashley Biden wrote this in the context of her struggle with sexual compulsiveness in later life. And she attributes those compulsions to the fact that her father took showers with her in a way that was, quote, not appropriate. Now, we have no reason to doubt that what she wrote is true. She did not write this for public consumption. She wrote it in a diary that she just heard she accidentally left behind in a halfway house in Palm Beach, Florida in June of 2020, during the presidential race. The woman who took the room that she left, a single mother, found that diary under the bed. Now, if you are the father of daughters, ask yourself, is there any explanation for that behavior that is justifiable? And there's not. It's sick and it's horrifying. Now, Ashley Biden doesn't say how old she was at the time she showered with her father, but obviously she was old enough to remember doing it. And by the way, little kids don't take showers, they take baths.
Yeah, why would you be in a shower?
Inappropriate showering with your own daughter? If that's not child molestation, it is definitely close enough to justify a police visit. But the police have not visited Joe Biden. They're not investigating this. Instead, the FBI is breaking into the homes of journalists who brought it to public attention. And now, according to the Daily Mail, again, you just heard this, the feds are investigating a woman called Amy Harris, who had the misfortune of finding the diary. To be clear, none of these people committed crimes, certainly not federal crimes, and yet they are being harassed and tormented by federal law enforcement because they embarrassed Joe Biden and spilled very dark secrets to the world. And the effect is to intimidate everybody else in the media out of covering it. And that's why you're not seeing media coverage about this anywhere. It's enough to make you reassess stories that you have read about Joe Biden in the past that we probably didn't take seriously enough. But in light of this, we take them very seriously. In the run-up to the last presidential election, several media outlets did run stories, and they included videos and photographs and first-hand testimonials that documented Joe Biden's habit of touching young women, often in ways that made them visibly uncomfortable. A lot of people laugh this off. It doesn't seem quite as funny now. You're seeing a small selection of those pictures on your screen right now. In a particularly creepy picture from 2015, Joe Biden leans in uncomfortably close to the daughter of Senator Chris Coons of Delaware during a signing-in ceremony. Joe Biden also frequently comment on the physical appearance of very young women. Here's just one example from May of 2019.
What I'm going to do, if you give me an address, I'm going to write you a longer answer and tell you the exact things I would do, okay? Okay? Promise? I'll bet you're as bright as you're good looking. I tell you.
To be clear, Joe Biden has not simply over the years and recent years been accused of making women uncomfortable. He has been accused of rape. You'll remember that a former Biden staffer called Tara Reid, whose story, again, we probably didn't take seriously enough, alleged that when she was 29, Joe Biden pinned her against a wall and penetrated her. Now, she was immediately attacked by Democratic partisans. You're a liar, because actually they don't believe all women. But then a phone call, a contemporaneous phone call that Tara Reid's mother made to the Larry King Show, corroborated the fact that happened. She said her daughter had left Washington because of the actions of a, quote, prominent senator. Now, at the time, the media just buried the story or laughed about it. Joe Biden responded by promising to be more mindful. And that was it. This is from April of 2019.
I'm always trying to make a human connection. That's my responsibility, I think. I shake hands, I hug people, I grab men and women by the shoulders and say, you can do this. And whether they're women, men, young, old, it's the way I've always been. The social norms have begun to change, they've shifted, and the boundaries of protecting personal space have been reset. And I get it. But I will be more mindful and respectful of people's personal space. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I've worked my whole life to empower women.
I've worked my whole life to empower women. I just care too much. That was his explanation. And a lot of people bought it. But now that we know that he behaved in such a way that his own daughter believes made her sexually compulsive in later life, which is a classic symptom of abuse, it's time to reassess this. As Joe Biden said the words you just saw, his own daughter, the same daughter's life was collapsing. She was campaigning for him as she was going to rehab. And it's worth noting that right after Joe Biden's apology came out, yet another woman publicly accused him of sexual misconduct. That woman is called Vail Conert-Young. And she said that when she was a White House intern, Biden, quote, put his hand on the back of my head and pressed his forehead to my forehead while he talked to me. I remember he told me I was a, quote, pretty girl. So at this point, no more benefit of the doubt. This man is a creep. Well, Biden was doing the same thing to his daughter in the shower, was he? We know that he showered with her in a way that she felt damaged her. If there's anything that deserves an investigation, it is this. But of course, the FBI is not looking into it because Joe Biden controls the FBI.
Of course.
And said they're trying to cover it up. And by the way, this is at least the second time that Joe Biden has used the FBI to hide drug abuse and allegations of sexual misconduct with minors within his own family. And both those stories came out this week. The FBI also swooped in when Hunter Biden violated federal gun laws and was accused, according to his own text messages, of being a, quote, pedophile by his girlfriend/sister-in-law, someone who presumably would know, since she was within the family. Of course, the FBI never charged Hunter Biden with anything and said they hid the existence of his laptop for more than a year, despite the fact that laptop contained evidence of multiple felonies, not least numerous FARA violations. And FARA is a law that the White House now tells us they're enforcing with maximum vigor. But here the president's son, for years, represented foreign governments in Washington without registering as a lobbyist. That is the definition of a FARA violation. Has he been charged? No. And incidentally, the FBI still has that laptop. They claim they've been investigating it for years now. They've done nothing with it. And while the feds kept the laptop locked away, Joe Biden told us, with the backing of the intelligence community, it was all Russian disinformation.
We are in a situation where we have foreign countries trying to interfere in the outcome of our election. His own national security advisor told him that what is happening with his buddy, I will. His buddy, Rudy Giuliani, he's being used as a Russian pawn. He's being fed information that is Russian, that is not true.
I know you didn't ask it. I have no response. It's another smear campaign. It's right up your alley. Those are the questions you always ask.
So to be clear, at the moment that Joe Biden was telling the country from the debate stage that that laptop was, quote, Russian disinformation, the FBI knew perfectly well that it wasn't because they had it. And they knew it wasn't Russian disinformation, as anyone who looks through it for about 15 seconds knows it's real. And they knew that. But there's not a single leak from the FBI saying, actually, candidate Biden, you're lying. So there are two big points to take away from this. The first is Joe Biden should not be running this country. No one who has run his own family in this way should be in charge of anybody else. His behavior as a father is truly dark, even by modern standards. Biden should explain immediately why he inappropriately showered with his own daughter. He should be asked that at his next press availability. His chief of staff, Ron Klain, who runs the country, should be asked, you worked for a man who showered with his own daughter, and by her own account, distorted the rest of her life because he did. How do you feel about that? And at that point, Joe Biden should resign. And at the very least, spend the rest of his life trying to repair his own children who need it badly. And the second point to make is that Biden is using the FBI as his personal secret police.
They work that way with all the
Dispatching
liberals.
them forward to crush
All
and
the
intimidate
Democrats.
and prosecute people who get in his way or his family's way. Maybe that's not surprising
FBI
from a guy who
needs to
spent
be
his entire
gutted.
life living off taxpayers. He believes he owns the Department of Justice, but he doesn't. And the fact he's behaving as if he does is scary as hell. We cannot let the FBI become enforcers for politicians and their families. If we allow that, it's the end of everything. Harmeet Dillon is managing partner of the Dillon Law
FBI
Group.
has
She
been doing
represents
that for
Project
years.
Veritas in this case. She joins us today. Harmeet, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Tucker.
So we spoke about this when it initially happened, but it's ever more clear that Project Veritas and the woman who sold the diary committed no crime, certainly no federal crime, and that Joe Biden is using the FBI as his personal secret police, and no one is saying anything about it.
Absolutely right, Tucker. And when you look at the search warrants that were served on our clients and executed, each of the 4 claims involves the word stolen, possession of stolen property, conspiracy to transport stolen property across state lines, and so on. All stolen, 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 stolen. But guess what? All along, as we said, and now as the press is reporting independently, nothing was stolen in this case. And so it begs the question, how did the FBI get search warrants? How did multiple judges, by the way, sign off on search warrants, not just for the property that they seized, but for months beforehand, emails, 200,000 of them? And the answer is, somebody must have lied to a gullible or willing FBI, who then passed on those lies to federal judges. Who are those people? Almost certainly members of the Biden family and their legal representatives. And so once we finally shut down this abusive investigation, get our property back, and see what was in those search warrants, which, by the way, the ACLU and Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press have filed applications for, then there needs to be a criminal investigation into the lies told to our federal law enforcement and get to the bottom of that. And that is relevant to how the Biden administration is weaponizing the DOJ and how powerful lawyers in New York City were able to call up the DOJ and simply run roughshod over the protections of the First Amendment, the Privacy Protection Act, DOJ regulations, and common law protecting journalists. Tucker, as you pointed out, so what if the property was stolen? From the beginning of this case, the DOJ knows that it is perfectly legal for journalists like James O'Keefe from Project Veritas to run with stolen property and publish it. It's protected by the United States Constitution, the United States Supreme Court. So this should never happen again to any journalist of any political persuasion, Tucker.
No, of course not. And I'm waiting for the first brave reporter to ask the question that must be asked to Joe Biden, which is, why did you shower with your daughter in a way she described as not appropriate, in a way that she believes made her sexually compulsive in later life? Why don't you explain what that means? I think we have a right to know. Harmeet Dillon, I appreciate all the work you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tucker.
We've got a Fox News alert for you. So, this is almost beyond belief, but just before this show aired, we learned that last night, producers for Stephen Colbert's show on CBS committed insurrection at the United States Capitol. Adam Schiff, the congressman from California, who has spent the last year and a half telling you that unauthorized violations of Capitol space are a coup, Adam Schiff illegally gave producers from CBS access to the Capitol. And then the group, which includes the show's senior producer, director, comedian, and writer, remained in the Longworth House office building after hours. And the point of them being there was for them to harass sitting members of Congress. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert. U.S. Capitol Police say they got a call about a disturbance at about 8:30 p.m. They told us, quote, responding officers observed 7 individuals unescorted and without congressional ID in a 6th-floor hallway. Officers then arrested them and charged them with unlawful entry into the Capitol complex. Now, that's the exact same charge that many January 6th defendants face. We'll just get right to it. It is likely that some members of Stephen Colbert's team will be held in solitary confinement for a year and a half without being charged. Why? Because this is an insurrection. And actually, joking aside, how can they not be held for a year and a half in solitary confinement without being charged? Because the precedent is in place. And how in the world can Adam Schiff, again, who spent the last year and a half eliminating the civil liberties of Trump voters on the basis of January 6th, do the exact same thing and not face punishment? Pearl Harbor. No, it's exactly like what happened on January 6th. So we'll take a close look at what the punishments are. Liz Cheney, call your office. You've got another committee to
Kids
impanel.
think Colbert is so cool.
We'll
They
stand
love
for it.
him.
We're joining with Democrats right now to confiscate your firearms when leading Republican from that group just admitted he does not care about gang violence or murders in cities. That's where all the murders are taking place. But John Cornyn of Texas says straight out, I don't care. That's not the point. The point is to take your guns.
I don't care about
We'll be right
crime. Just this is all about socialism. They don't care about crime.
So there's a big push in the U.S. Senate to do something about so-called gun crime. So if you had a map of gun crime, that is crimes committed with guns, crimes in which people die by gunshot, you would notice that they are clustered in cities. That's where the overwhelming majority of gun crime takes place. But the Senate isn't trying to do anything about that. Instead, Democrats have decided this is a perfect opportunity in the wake of school shootings to disarm you. And the amazing thing is, Mitch McConnell, the head Republican in the Senate, is on their side completely, and he's rounded up a group of 10 Republicans who can help him. So the backbone of this package of legislation they're trying to get through is something called a red flag law. And in one sentence, a red flag law would allow the government to confiscate your firearms without even charging you with a crime, much less convicting you of one. So who are these Republicans? Well, the lead is John Cornyn of Texas. And the amazing thing about John Cornyn is he admits he doesn't care about gun crimes committed by actual criminals. We know this from a piece today in Axios, and we're quoting. Senator John Kennedy asked Cornyn during one lunch, quote, "Are we focused on gang violence and inner city murders?" And the response was, "No, we're not focusing on that." Well, if you're not focusing on that, why are you doing this exactly? We don't need to guess about where gun crime comes from. Here's a montage of some of the crimes that John Cornyn can't be bothered with.
A Ring camera in the neighborhood captured the back and forth of gunfire as panicked teenagers ran through the street.
It's happened 26 times in just 1 week. A string of robberies that all begin and end the same way. NYPD video showing one of them where a team of armed suspects riding in a dark-colored Mercedes-Benz or Volkswagen Passat suddenly stop their car, jump out, flash their guns, rob their innocent victims, get back in the car, and drive off.
Washington State alone has seen a record 85 armed robberies at cannabis stores so far this year. This employee was shot 6 times.
So crime is a complicated thing, but the crime spike that we're seeing now is not complicated at all. Prosecutors across the country are refusing to enforce laws that we already have. And when you do that, crime spikes. So if you're the United States Senate, if you're John Cornyn from Texas, supposedly free state of Texas, you'd probably want to do something about that. But no. John Cornyn has decided to take guns from lawful gun owners. And if there's one reason you vote Republican, it's to prevent that. So it's not surprising that John Cornyn is very unpopular with Republican voters. Watch his reception today at the Texas Republican Convention. Listen for the boos.
So let's take our country back, starting with Congress in November. Thank you, God bless you, and may God continue to bless our great state of Texas.
Senator Mike Lee sits in the Senate. He's from Utah. He's watched this whole thing. He's a constitutional scholar, among other things, and we're delighted to have him tonight. Senator, thanks so much for coming on. I'm not going to put you in a position where you have to attack your colleagues, but as a broader question, I wonder why, if you're worried about crimes committed with guns, murders committed with guns, that you wouldn't do something about them and instead focus, as they are now, on taking guns from law-abiding people who've not been convicted of anything.
I think that's very important. Look, anytime a mass shooting occurs, many laws have been violated, sometimes dozens of laws. And as you pointed out correctly, in many cases you have a failure of enforcement at the state and the local level. And sometimes we need to figure out why those failures are happening. But what is concerning is when you get a gang of 20 that comes together, however well-intentioned they may be at the outset, if they come together and they claim to have formulated a deal that they then present to the public, as they did on Monday, saying we've got a deal and we'll be voting on it, within 10 days. You need to actually have a deal. They had no deal, and that was a problem. They had a very loose set of outlines. One of the reasons this matters, Tucker, is that we're dealing here with a number of freestanding constitutional rights. Not just your Second Amendment rights, but your due process rights under the Fifth Amendment, your takings clause rights under the Fifth Amendment, your right to a jury trial, your right to confront witnesses under the Confrontation Clause. All of these things are potentially implicated when you're talking about taking the gun rights away from a law-abiding American, someone who's not been convicted of anything. Those questions hadn't been answered. They hadn't even been asked. And that's why it was kind of strange that you had this gang coming together saying we've solved the problem.
Can I ask you just kind of big picture? If you don't represent your voters consistently enough, ultimately they're going to revolt. Republican voters don't want this. Republican senators don't care. Are they worried? They think they're going to win big in November. What if Republican voters decide not to vote or form a third party? I mean, how much do they think Republican voters are going to put up with, I guess is my question.
Well, that is a concern, and my expectation, Tucker, would be not just Republican voters, but voters from lots of backgrounds, who want to believe that their senators are there cautiously, carefully legislating. Look, we're at our best in the United States Senate when we deliberate, when we debate, when we go back and forth, when we have legislative text that we debate and we amend and we improve along the way. I think we're at our very worst when we bring something forward under the heat of the moment with a lot of emotion, and we just tell members that they've got to vote it, they've got to vote on it, up or down, consequences be damned, without anybody having an adequate opportunity to review it. That part really hurts the Republican Party, and for that matter, it hurts the Republic.
All right. So nicely put. Senator Mike Lee of Utah, I appreciate you coming on today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So literally millions of foreign nationals have come into our country illegally since Biden became president, but the feds just caught over a dozen suspected terrorists coming over. You knew that was going to happen. We've got the tail straight ahead. So there's never been an easier time to enter the United States. It's simply just walk across at this point. That has been the case since Joe Biden became president. Now, we imagine that everyone who's coming across is coming for a better life, to participate in our economy, and most of them are.
No, I don't.
Not all of them. If you're a bad person trying to come into the United States, this is your moment, and they know that. So criminals from the FBI's terror watch list are coming over. Fox's Bill Melugin is at the border with proof of that from the Border Patrol. Hey, Bill.
Hey, Tucker, good evening to you. That's exactly right. Brand new data from CBP shows that the number of people on the terror watch list showing up here at our southern border is shooting through the roof under President Biden. Take a look at these numbers just out from CBP. What you're looking at are Border Patrol arrests of people on the FBI's terrorist screening database. Take a look at the numbers for fiscal year 2022 already. 50 of these arrests of the people on the terror watch list already. That is more than the previous 5 years combined. You can see in 2021 there were 15, the year before that there were 3, the year before that there were 0. So you can see the trend here. Really, these last couple of years under President Biden, these numbers have shot up like a rocket ship. And again, these are arrests of people who are known or suspected terrorists, and it's all happening as illegal crossings are exploding down here. Take a look at this video we put together the last couple of weeks showing some of these illegal crossings we've witnessed. The May numbers just came out. They are historic yet again. More than 239,000 illegal crossings at our southern border here in May. That is a brand new record, the highest in DHS history. It's the third month in a row there were more than 200,000 illegal crossings. And listen to this, putting it in the big picture, since October, there have now been more than 1.5 million illegal crossings at our southern border. That's bigger than the populations of Seattle and Boston combined. Last thing we'd like to show you, take a look at this wild video out of Border Patrol's Tucson, Arizona sector. What you're going to see here is a huge group of illegal immigrants rushing the border from Mexico near Douglas, Arizona. You're going to see several of them running to the border barrier. Some will start trying to climb over it. Others will start trying to crawl under it or dig underneath it as overwhelmed border agents and pickup trucks try to respond on the other side. Eventually, some illegal immigrants pop through and they run into the United States. It's unclear how many of them were stopped, but that is what agents have to deal with day in, day out. And back out here live, the reason why those terror watch list numbers are so concerning is a CBP source tells me just since October, there have been more than 440,000 known gotaways here at our southern border. You do the math on that, that's an average of about 1,800 people every single day sneaking past our border agents. And Tucker, the big question is, who are those gotaways? We'll send it back to you.
Where are they going? Bill Melugin, fantastic job as always. Biden did this. What a destroyer. He destroyed his own family, showered with his own daughter, and then wrecked the country. John Daniel Davidson is the senior editor at The Federalist. He just returned from the border. And
Look at
we're
all the
always eager
dummies
for
that
a
voted
first-hand
for him.
view of what is happening there. He spoke to migrants coming across. John, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Sorry.
What did you see,
Shouldn't
and
have
what was
said
your
that.
impression of it?
Well, what I saw was a border that is frankly out of control. Every migrant that we talked to told us that they came north and they plan to get into the United States because they think it's a good time to come. They think that they can get in and that they'll be allowed to stay. And the thing is, Tucker, they're not wrong. Most of the migrants who are getting in and who are getting picked up by Border Patrol and Customs and Border Protection are being allowed to stay. They're being paroled into the country. They're being released pending their asylum hearing. There's any number of ways that they're being released, but all in all, the majority of them are getting through. And the ones that aren't getting through are getting sent back to Mexico, and they're waiting there to try again. And that's who we talked to. There's thousands and thousands of migrants in northern Mexican border cities waiting to come across.
So the Biden administration is making this possible. They said they would, and they have. But two of the states into which these migrants are coming, Texas and Arizona, have Republican governors, Greg Abbott in Texas and Doug Ducey in Arizona. Do you see any evidence that they're doing anything to save the rest of the country from this?
Not in a serious way. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has tried with his Operation Lone Star to sort of make it more difficult for migrants coming north. He's struck a few deals with corrupt Mexican governors, but nothing really that is making a substantive difference. And we know that because hundreds of thousands of people are being arrested every month. The numbers are increasing despite these operations at the state level. And the other thing that we know is that the Mexican government is involved in this. How do we know that? Because you can't get to northern Mexico. You can't get up to the border unless you go through these checkpoints. And you can't get through the checkpoints unless you have papers. So there's official corruption going on. And the evidence is that hundreds of thousands of people are moving through Mexico up to the border every
We
month.
get clamped down on
Such a
Mexico
crime.
so easy.
It's unbelievable this is happening. John Daniel Davidson, appreciate your coming on. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. Shut up, he did. And that was the end of the story. What's interesting is Ghislaine Maxwell hasn't killed herself yet, but lawyers are claiming there have been attempts to have her killed in prison. But shut up, look away, look away! That's next. So if you haven't seen Ghislaine Maxwell recently, if she's absent from your local Starbucks, there's a reason she's in prison. She was convicted of sex trafficking late last year. Unlike her accomplice, Jeffrey Epstein, however, she has not yet died suspiciously behind bars. But not for lack of trying. Her lawyers say there have been attempts to have her assassinated in jail. Ooh, fascinating. Fox's Trace Gallagher has that story for us tonight. Hey, Trace.
Hey, Tucker, Ghislaine Maxwell is scheduled to be sentenced on June 28. She's 60 and is facing 55 years in prison for grooming and recruiting girls as young as 14 to have sex with Jeffrey Epstein. Maxwell's attorneys are looking for leniency, asking the court to impose a sentence less than 20 years. And the big reason they want a lighter sentence is Maxwell's safety. Writing in court papers, quoting here, one of the female inmates in Miss Maxwell's housing unit told at least 3 other inmates that she had been offered money to murder Miss Maxwell and that she planned to strangle her in her sleep. The lawyers did not reveal how much the inmate was allegedly offered to kill Maxwell, but the inmate reportedly said the money would have been worth spending an extra 20 years in prison. Wow. Maxwell's lawyers also believe there are numerous inmates who would not hesitate to kill Ghislaine Maxwell for money, fame, even street cred. The Bureau of Prisons won't comment on pending cases, and there are many who believe if Maxwell was killed, the jail cell video might just disappear. Remember, Jeffrey Epstein apparently killed himself in one of the most secure prisons in the country because the guards accidentally failed to check on him for several hours. He also tried to kill himself once before, and lawyers requested the video of that attempt be preserved. The prison agreed and saved it. But again, accidentally, they saved video from the wrong part of the prison, and the Epstein suicide attempt video was accidentally then deleted.
Accidentally.
A lot of accidents in a row. Trace, I appreciate you bringing that to us tonight. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Were all the videos from Pedo Island? Oh. So if you're conservative, you remember the name Julian Assange, and you remember the Bush people were always telling you he was a bad guy. But at this point, you have to wonder, what exactly did Julian Assange do wrong? What was his actual crime? Well, offending people with power. That was his real crime. Assange founded WikiLeaks, and WikiLeaks published internal emails that embarrassed the DNC and the Hillary Clinton for President campaign. It also published videos showing the U.S. military killed civilians in Iraq and covered it up. So, exposing the crimes of the powerful is itself a crime, apparently, so the U.S. government has charged Assange with violations of the Espionage Act. Really? He's a spy now! And then leaned on the British government to help. So today, the Britain's Interior Ministry authorized Assange's extradition to the United States to face trial. Here he faces 175 years in prison. Here was the reaction from Assange's father today.
Australian friends find it extraordinary that the country that gave the world freedom of the press, enshrined in its constitution in the First Amendment, today brought that freedom to an end. It's over. For a publisher to be extradited to the United States, charged under the Espionage Act, oppresses all publishers, all journalists everywhere.
It's an atrocity. Gabe Shipton is Julian Assange's brother. He's also a film producer. We're happy to have him join us tonight. Gabe, thanks so much for coming on. So, do you believe your brother will be extradited to the United States, and do you believe the Biden administration will prosecute him under the Espionage Act?
Well, Tucker, it certainly seems that way. The Biden administration has continued on with this extradition, and Julian is running out of options in the UK. The courts at the highest level have now approved his extradition, and so has the UK government. So we think that his extradition is going to happen probably within the year.
So if your brother can be prosecuted under the so-called Espionage Act, then any journalist or any citizen who offends the people in charge or exposes their misdeeds can be prosecuted. Why isn't every journalist in the West defending your brother?
Well, that's a very good question, Tucker. I think, we've seen some journalists come out. Obviously, yourself, you've been very strong. But till now, a lot of them have been able to say, well, the UK government is going to stop this. But now that's become very clear that the UK government is not going to stop this. And this is really, the fight of our lifetimes for press freedom. And so it's up to all the journalists now to get together and stand up together to fight this and to just get the Biden administration to drop this.
I must say, for all of its faults, I think the United States is still a freer country than the UK. I think he probably has a better shot here. I hope that's true. And I appreciate your continuing to bring your brother's case to the world's attention because it deserves it. Gabe Shipton, thank you.
Thank you.
So the Biden administration is failing on every level, the one run by the guy who showers with his own daughter. But they have one thing that they are very proud of, and no, it's not the fact the president showered with his daughter. We'll tell you what it is. They released a picture to prove it. We'll show it to you. Coming up. Now, you might think the Biden administration would be ashamed of what it's done for the last year and a half, but you'd be wrong. They're very proud, and the thing they're proud of is their diversity, which is, needless to say, their strength. And we know that because Admiral Richard Levine just tweeted out this picture along with the message, quote, "When the first openly gay press secretary and the first openly trans four-star admiral